I think obviously in terms of moving over, Ben, I think we can hand over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you, Tobias. That was fantastic. As per usual, a good overview of row-level security and the new, nice to see the new interface. As you say, Microsoft had just brought that along, and it means you can do this stuff without writing DAX, and they've made it a little easier. Instead of using and, they now use instead of using or, they now use any, don't they? So again, just trying to make this a little more friendly for those of us who didn't grow up coding. Okay, so let me share my screen, and we'll have a little change of direction, and I'm going to open up Teams here. So Gil, you can probably put your hand down if you want. I see that's still up, or somebody can put it down for you. I can probably do that. Okay, so just again, a quick test. Can you see a PowerPoint which says planner data to Power BI via Flow?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So that's what we're going to cover off, and we're kind of going to cover off the why as well. So unlike Tobias, I do like a PowerPoint as a crutch. So this is me. My name is Ben Howard. We mentioned, and it was mentioned earlier, that Power BI Birmingham has been going for a couple of sessions now. I co-run the Power BI user group in Manchester, and we've been going for quite a few years. So that's one of the things I do, and I present there, or I don't present there very often, but I'm certainly there quite a lot. And I know Flavio has been over and presented for us as well. So that's one of the things I do, as well as just going out and doing Power BI consultancy. So unlike Tobias, where he works for a company as an employee, I don't. I'm a consultant, and I go and peddle my wares, as it were, creating Power BI reports and trying to work with data with customers. So that's kind of what I do. Before that, I did a lot of work with Microsoft Project, and that's kind of what got me into Power BI, because we were reporting in Project and Project Online, but there was no reporting service, there was no reporting application, if you like, once Project went to Project Online, and that's when we got hold of what was Power Pivot and then Power BI, and that introduced me and got me interested into Power BI and data. Okay, so that's a little bit about me as a background. Let's have a look about why this talk and why, if you like, this solution. So I mentioned I had a Microsoft Project background. Well, the Project Products Group in Microsoft produced not only Microsoft Project, okay, but they have also, in the last few years, introduced a solution called Microsoft Planner. Okay, and I'll do a quick demo of Planner for those of you who are not familiar with it. In fact, again, let's use the power of socials on here. If you can give me a thumbs up or something like that, the reaction if you've used or you use Planner. Yeah. So a few. Tobias, nice one. This might be useful for you. Okay, so I'll do a quick demo, but note that Microsoft Planner is given away by Microsoft, if you like, as part of your E1 license. So if you go and buy an E1 or E3 or E5 license from Microsoft, you get Planner. Okay, it's a great way of managing day-to-day tasks and projects. It's not what I would call a schedule management tool. It's more a task management tool. Okay, so get pedantic about the differences of project management here. Okay, so now we know a little bit about what Planner is. What's the problem? Well, the only way to view a plan status is by a single plan at a time. So I can go and have a look at one plan, and I can have a look at its status and see which tasks are late and see which tasks are in which bucket, etc. But if I want to do that across multiple plans, that's impossible out of the box. So it's very difficult for me as a manager to say, hey, show me a list of all of the tasks that I've got for Ben Howard across different projects. That's not possible. okay? Or show me a list of all of the late tasks across multiple plans. Again, not possible. So Microsoft provide this enterprise solution with your enterprise license, but they haven't provided any enterprise reporting for that. So the only way that you can get an enterprise report, or the only automated way that I know, and if people can tell me different, very happy to know that, is to today use Power Automate to provide that enterprise solution. Now, I put a little asterisk by that. I do have a partial solution that uses Microsoft Graph, but I've got to create my own Power BI connector, and at the moment that's a little beyond my skill set, and a little beyond the time that I have to play with this at the moment. So that's kind of a problem statement that we've got. We've got this tool called Microsoft Planner, and we can't report on it. Let's go and have a quick look at Microsoft Planner. So this should come up here. Let's just come out of Power Automate and go into Planner. So this is Microsoft 365, of course, that you know and you love, and you get your enterprise license with it. And obviously in there, we've got all of the usual things such as Outlook and Word and Excel, blah, 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 blah. But you may notice that as well as Power BI, you might have Planner. Okay, so let's have a look at a Planner plan. You can see I've got several Planner plans here. I've got one which is pinned called PL300 Storytelling, and then I've got various other plans that I've created over the years. Now, this is both a demo system and an actual a system that I use for my real work. So I create courses for an external company. I did create a course called PL300 Storytelling. So those of you doing your Microsoft exams will know that PL300 is one of the Power BI exams. And I create videos for this for these courses. And so I have a set of tasks, and I organize those tasks into buckets. So here we can see we've got a task called, or a bucket called to do, and I've got a task here which is effectively represented as a card, which says the task name is demo, creating custom tooltips. I can assign it to one or more people. I can put it in a bucket. I can associate some progress with it and priority, and have some notes and some checklist items and a few other things. Okay, so that's Planner, and ultimately I can take these tasks, and in order to control my plan, I can move them around, and if tasks are late, then we get a little red icon against the task. So very useful, great for managing a single plan. Okay, so I can look at this PL300 storytelling and I can see what's happening, and I've got some associated charts with that plan. But if I wanted to see PL300 storytelling and my golf championship plan together, I can't do it. Okay, it's just impossible. Okay, so that's Planner for us. That's what it does. Okay, let's ping back to the slides. So now you've got an idea of Planner, then let's have a look at kind of what else is in this solution set of components, if you like, that allow us to take the data out of Planner and ultimately end up in Power BI, because we're a Power BI user group, right? So that's what we want to do. So I can take Planner, data out of Planner, and pump that into Power Automate, or rather get Power Automate to bring that into Planner for me. Now, if I get the information into Power Automate, I've got to store it somewhere. Now, I've chosen in my solution to store it in Excel Online. Why? Well, because I was making this available to the community, and pretty much everybody, if they've got an E1 license, will have Excel Online, and I could provide an Excel template for that. But that Excel could be replaced by Microsoft Lists, it could be replaced by SQL Server, Oracle Server, or any sort of data storage area that you feel that you want to implement. Once the data is in Excel, so I've used Microsoft Flow to get it out of Planner, pumped it into Excel, then of course we know that we can consume data from an Excel sheet or Excel tables into Power BI. Okay, and as I mentioned, we don't just have to deal with Excel. We could have another repository in there, such as SharePoint lists, etc. Okay, so I think I've described all of these components. This is the way I've set it up. So in order for this to run, then each plan, so that we can find the plans, must be assigned to an Office team via Microsoft Teams. Okay, so when you create a planner plan, you have the opportunity to create a team to either create a new Office group or associate this plan to an existing Office group. Okay, and that Office group needs to be associated with Teams. And the reason is this portion here. If we just bring this up, this portion is in Power Automate, can go and get a list of teams within the organization. Can't, as far as I'm aware, get a list of Office groups. Okay, so it can't directly get a list of plans, Microsoft Planner Plans. It can, however, get a list of Microsoft teams or team groups, and then once we have a team, we can get the plans associated with a team. So that's one of the prerequisites of this. Now, again, the Power BI, the Power Automate that I've set up, I set this up to run daily because, as Tobias says, we're working with project data. I'm not working with transactional data. I'm working with data which tends to get updated on a daily basis and is reviewed at best kind of once a week. So I just set this flow to run daily. And what this flow does in essence is it goes to this Excel file here. And this Excel file has a set of tables in there. In fact, let's go and have a look at one of those Excel files now. So let's just open up Excel. And this is Excel for the web. In fact, we can get at this a slightly different way. I'm going to get at this by SharePoint, because this is where you would set this up. So we're storing Excel in SharePoint Online, and that means that obviously many people can edit that at once, which is nice, but it also means I can access that from my flow. So I've set this up for a group company here, or a SharePoint group called APO Group. And in there, I've got a document folder, of course. And in there, I've got a set of Excel documents. Now, notice I've got a few of these because, of course, this is a test and demo system, so I've run this multiple times. But let's just have a look at this one called Planner Tasks Brum 1. Okay, so that's an Excel sheet. It's just a copy of one of the others. It's an Excel workbook. Okay, and you can see in that workbook, what I have is 6 tabs, one called Plans, one called Buckets, Tasks, Assignments, Team Members, and Checklists. Each of these worksheets has a table which holds the corresponding information. So my plans worksheet has a table, okay, and the table name, of course, is something sensible called plan_TVL. And that table contains a plan ID, or a column called plan ID, a column called plan name, and a column called team name. So here you can see, actually, I've got a team called P4W, Project for the Web Fundamentals course, and I've got 3 plans that are associated with that. So again, think of this in a real world environment. You could have a team called Sales, and you might have 5 or 6 different planner plans associated with that that Microsoft Teams name. Okay, so that's kind of the way this works. We duplicate that for buckets, of course, and tasks. Tasks, of course, are those task cards that I've just shown you. Okay, so that's the Excel document. That's its purpose in life, is to basically be a repository for the data that we're taking out of Planner. Okay, so this Power Automate flow takes data out of Planner and it shoves it into Excel. However, it also needs to, the first time it runs, is it needs to remove existing rows from the Excel tables. Now, the reason for this is I don't know if somebody deletes a task out of Planner. There's no way for me to say, oh, I know that's been deleted, and therefore I'll just delete the row out of Excel. Okay, so in order to make sure that the data has integrity, what the flow does is it removes all of the existing data and then goes through and writes it all in again. Now, you might think that's wasteful, and in truth, it is. But, you know, we are where we are, and we deal with the tools that Microsoft give us and the hooks that Microsoft give us. Okay. And then for every plan, once we've cleansed out the Excel file, for every plan, we go and we add the rows for the tasks, buckets, assignments, checklist, items into the relevant tables in Excel. And then once that's done, and I know that that might take an hour, then I can just automatically get Power BI to run a scheduled refresh. And that scheduled refresh then takes data out of that Excel online file and updates my Power BI file. And of course, then we get into the whole collaboration around Power BI. Okay, so that's the solution. Any questions so far? I don't see any in the chat, but I'll keep an eye on the chat as we go along. So if you want to ask a question, dump it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just take questions at the end. So, because I'm lucky enough to have been a Microsoft MVP for 14 years, firstly with Microsoft Project and latterly with Power BI and the data platform group, I actually packaged this up and made it available to the community. So you can go and get this solution. I'm going to run you through it, but you can go and get it. There are actually two versions of the flow. I'm going to take you through this one, which runs a script action. So remember, I talked about removing the rows out of Excel. First of all, my original version used a delete row action, and that was slow. That's fine, because people can end up with 20,000 tasks in here. Okay, and then somebody said, oh, why don't you use that automation feature in Excel and just run a script to remove everything, which is what I'll do. Okay, now, again, you can go to this GitHub, and again, you know, here's one I prepared earlier somewhere. Here it is. Okay, so I've got various things published on GitHub, but one of them is Planner Power BI with Power Automate, and you can see in here we have effectively that Excel file, planner.xlsx. We've got a full map of how this works, okay, but also I've got a zip file. Now, you may well be able to import this zip file into Flow. So Flow will allow you to export a flow to a zip file and potentially import it. Now, people, because this is on YouTube, I know people have had different experiences with this, so that's why I've created the flow map, so that if you need to, you can recreate this whole thing from scratch. Notice we've also got the Office scripts in there, which are what we use to kind of remove all of those initial files or the initial rows. Okay, so that's all pre-packaged, so that's where you can go and get that. Let's see what else we've got in here. Okay, so if we want to set this up, how do we do it? Well, let's just run through that. Basically, I say you start with Excel and you take that Excel file that I gave you as part of GitHub and you stick that somewhere in a SharePoint site. Okay, stick it in a SharePoint site that is going to be around for a long time, not one to do with a certain project, okay, but one that's going to be around. We then need to go and take the scripts, and I'll show you the scripts, and link them into the Excel file. Again, you need to create those scripts separately, but again, they're just pieces of text. And then you do the important thing, which is you test. Okay, so let's just go and have a look at that first bit. Okay, so here I am, I'm in my PBI run one piece. So I can show you those scripts, okay, because I'm not going to update this plan. Now, if you've not come across this, you'll see that in Excel Online, and this is Excel Online only, you do not get this in desktop version, I've got an Automate tab, okay? And that Automate basically opens up this Office scripts section where I can record some actions, create a new script. I can automate a task. Okay, this is, you know, part of a Power Platform solution. One of the tasks I want to do every time that I want Flow to do is I need Flow, as soon as it runs, to remove all of the old plans so I can then populate this table again. How do I do that? Well, I've got a little script here called remove plans. Okay, let's have a look at that script. Now, I'm just going to edit this. And you may not be able to see this too well. Let me Control-C that. I run up Notepad. And Notepad, of course, comes on a different screen. So we'll put it into here. And we'll just do Control-V, and we should be able to edit file. How do I increase zoom? Let's just zoom in. Should have just been able to change the font, shouldn't I? Font. Oh, I'm getting out of here. Let's zoom in a little more. Sorry, folks. Control plus. Okay, that'll have to do us. This basically runs 3 lines of code. Okay, it says let something called a variable called delete table equal this table called plan table. So all of my tables are named sensibly. Okay, so we go and get the plan table, and then we've got a comment here which says delete all rows at index 0 from the plan plan table. So it says let the number of rows equal delete table. Remember, delete table is our plan table, so we get the row count. So the number of rows we've now got in our table, and then it says if the number of rows is greater than 0, then delete, basically delete that row, okay, or delete those rows. So that's what that function does, or the script does. Now I can test this script, okay, just by clicking run. Okay, that will run the script, and notice it deletes all of the rows in the table very quickly. Okay, and if I want to just check that out again, I can add a few more rows into the table. Okay, and then I can run it again, and bang, it's gone. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. Let's go and have a look at Flow. Okay, so here's my Flow. Okay, now what I said was you can probably import this. So if you go into Power Automate, if we go home, for those of you who haven't dealt with Power Automate, it used to be called Microsoft Flow, which is why we all still call it Flow. And Microsoft Flow allows you to automate what it deems are repetitive tasks, or what Microsoft think are repetitive tasks. Now you can have different types of flows. The flows I have are ones that I've created in the cloud. Okay, so you can have cloud flows or desktop flows. So this is also known as process automation, where you automate your desktop to do things. But of course, your desktop's got to be switched on for that to happen. Cloud flows just kind of run in the cloud. So my machine can be switched off, and I can have this running at any time because all of my data is sitting in the cloud. Remember, I've got Microsoft Planner, sits in the cloud. I've got Excel Online, sits in the cloud. I've got Power BI, sits in the cloud. Okay, so these flows will run, and this stuff will run in the cloud, typically when I'm asleep. Okay, so one of the things you might want to try is, if you want to try this solution, is you can import a flow. Okay, so what you have to do is import a package. It's brackets legacy. I don't know why, but that's the zip file that you could that I've given you here. So you don't necessarily want to type this little lot in. Instead, if you can, you should go into Flow and say, hey, I'd like to upload, and then go and navigate for that zip file. As I say, you may not have success with that, and I apologize, but I don't think there's anything I can do about that. So if you've imported your flow, and you're going to have to configure it, and if you start it from scratch, you're using the map that I created for you. Again, you're going to have to configure that. So this is the flow that is doing everything for me here. It's called Add Planner Tasks to an Excel Online Business Spreadsheet. It's great. It typically runs fine every night. You can see that I have it running once a night at about 11:30. And then, of course, when I tried to run this today, it failed. Don't know why. Well, no, I do know why it's failed, but I'm going to see if it'll run happily tonight. But I'm just going to take you through the editing process of this and show you how I built this flow. Now, remember, we've got 6 things that we're really interested in a plan. We've got the plan name, we have the buckets, we have the tasks, we have the assignments, we have the checklist items, checklist rows, and we have typically something else. We have assignments. Oh, we need to know not just who's assigned, because the assignments doesn't give us a name, the assignment gives us an ID, and therefore we need to match up that ID with a user in our Office 365 environment. So because I've got kind of 6 pieces of data that I want, then my flow has 6 branches to it. Okay, so there's the first 3, and then there's the second 3. Okay, now I've got a nice, you can't see it here, but I've got a nice 32-inch monitor curved in front of me, and that's really how I like to modify my flow. Unfortunately, I'm presenting to you on a bog standard 19:6 resolution monitor on my laptop, so I can only see so much on here. But let's just go through this, because once you understand this, then it becomes relatively easy. So what does the flow do? Well, firstly, at the top, it runs every day at 11 o'clock, approximately, of course. Okay, so that's when I'm going to get it to run. Okay, and then the first thing I need it to do is I need it to go into each table and remove all of the data out of the table by using that script that we created. So what have we got here? Well, I've got an event in flow, or an action called remove existing task rows. Now, I should apologize. If you haven't used flow before, then flow basically has a set of actions and operations. Okay, so you can do different things. So for example, if we just have a look at Excel, okay, then we can go and do things such as get worksheets, or list rows present in a table, or update a row, or even add a row. So somewhere there should be add a row. Can't see that, but there is. There we go. Add a row into a table. Okay. There's also the ability to run a script. Oh, an Office script. Now, we're not just limited to Excel. We can do things with SQL Server. We can do things with Teams. Okay, so we have all of these kind of built-in operations and actions that we can perform on different sets of data. Okay, so that's what flow does. So we'll just get rid of that, and we'll come back to this one here. So the first branch goes and removes existing rows out of an Excel table. Now I have to configure this. I have to say, oh, where's the Excel table? Okay, well, it's stored in this group in SharePoint called APO group. You've seen that. I've stored it in the document library. The document library, once we're in there, it knows to give me a list of Excel files. So we should be able to see the PBI Brum ones in here, which we can. Okay, I'm going to stick with my standard planner tasks one. And then it says, what script do you want to run? Okay, and there's the scripts that I've written and are available for us. So that's the first thing it does, is it goes down and in this case, it removes the existing checklist rows. And then what the flow does is it says, oh, let's go and get a list of teams. So it goes to Office 365 and it says, oh, give me all of the teams that you've got. And then for every team, okay, so this gives me a list of teams and I can take the teams list as an output here. So we can come into here and we can go and get dynamic information. So I say, I want the teams list. And then for the teams list, I can say, oh, let's list the plans for the group. Okay, so the teams list is going to come back with team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4. And then for the team ID for team 1, let's go and list the plans for team 1 and then apply to each plan. So I've now got a list of plans. To each plan, I want to list the checklist items. Okay, the checklist item appears on a card as this. So here's my card, do something big in Teams, in Planner. Here's the checklist, do this thing, and then do that thing. Okay, so that's the checklist items, and I can check them as being done or not. Okay, so it's a nice way of breaking a task down further. So this goes and gets the checklist items for each team ID and then for each plan ID. And basically, we get the checklist details. It gets quite complex, of course. But once we've got the checklist details, we can add a row into a table. And again, I need to specify what tables you want to play with, okay, and deal with. So it's the same as we had before. It's the planner tasks.xlsx is the checklist table, and I've got 4 columns in that checklist table. If we go over to here, task ID, checklist title, and checklist is checked. Okay, so is it done or not, true or false? And what we're doing then is we're matching up items that flow give us and put us and match that up into the relevant column in our Excel table. Okay, and that's all we do. We repeat that kind of multiple times. We repeat it for users, and we repeat it then for assignments. We do that for existing plans. We do it for buckets, and we do it for tasks as well. Now, one of these is slightly different because we need to just go and get users. So users is slightly different because what we end up doing is we list all of the group members in a group, even if they're not used later. So even if you've not got any assignments, I still need to bring you in because ultimately the group members somewhere along the line gives me a user ID and a display name, which I can then utilize from this assignment row here, because all the assignments give me is a user assignment ID. So that user assignment ID, I then match up in Power BI to that user ID, which then gives me a sensible display name. The user principal name, if you like. Actually, it's not quite the user principal name, but it gives me the display name within Power BI. Okay, so that's what Power Automate does. And of course, it runs, as you've seen, on my system each night. I'm not going to start it now because it takes anywhere between 7 and 18 minutes to run. Typically, actually, it's going quite fast these days, so typically 7 minutes. But for me today, as we said, it was failing. We'll see what happens tonight. I might have to troubleshoot back a little bit. Okay, so that gives me effectively a list of data, an Excel sheet that looks like this. Okay, now I'm not going to use this one for the test. I'm going to use a different one. okay, because that one we just modified, but this one is the same data, but I haven't run the script on it. So that's the same data that we saw before. I've got some plans in there. We've got the assignments in there, which I, deleted before, etc. We've got the list of team members. Okay, so notice some of these are duplicated because, of course, Ben Howard is a member of multiple teams, as is Andrea and Andre and Maria, etc. So I need to begin to use Power BI then to cleanse all that little lot up. So what we have in the GitHub is a Power BI template, planner report with flow.pbit. Okay, now I downloaded all of these before, of course, as you would expect. So let's just go and open up Power BI. Should have had it open on the other screen, but I didn't, so apologies for that. Whilst this opens up, if you want to type a question, or if anybody has a question, now would be a great time to answer it, or even ask it.
I'll ask something, Ben, if I can, really quick.
Yeah.
So you had a diagram on the slides where you showed the workflow. Remember one of the first few slides?
Approximately somewhere up here.
Yeah, this one here. So
one, yeah.
I think you said that your Power BI is scheduled. The refresh is scheduled. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I schedule the refresh.
Right. Have you ever run into any issues where your Power Automate is taking longer than expected to refresh, and then your Power BI basically gets out of sync, or you already know more or less that it's never going to get away from that?
I know more or less, but it's never going to get away from it.
Right.
But it's a great question. What I should do, and what I would, if I was running this in, let's say it was Tobias, right, and I was running it in his organization, at the end of a flow, you can call a Power BI refresh.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. I would have my Power Automate then say, oh, now everything's finished, and bring all of those 6 branches into one. When I know everything's finished, then I'll call a Power BI refresh on that report. So that's how I would do it if I was to sell this to an organization.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I would do. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
But yeah, that's a great question. That's why you're the smart Power BI guy. Because you ask the smart questions, right? Okay, and here's my Power BI. Okay, so here's Power BI. Now, what I need to do is, if you've not played with a Power BI template file before, a Power BI template is a pre-configured set of visualizations, and it's a template really, and all you need to do is plug in the data source. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to say, oh, let's go and import a Power BI template. Okay, so it's going to ask me where I want to import this from. This is one that I downloaded from the GitHub earlier. Okay, so planner report with flow. We'll just open that. It's a PBIT, Power BI template file. Thank you, Rudy, for your comment. You can also trigger refreshers for data flows too. Good point. So when you create a template, you can put some blurb at the beginning. This is my blurb that basically says, this is what this template does, and you need to give the template some source data. Okay. And it says here, enter the path to the Excel file stored in SharePoint into the Excel file web URL parameter below. That's that bit there. The path can be found, and it tells you how to find the path. Okay, I'm going to show you how to find the path. Okay, so if we go back to our Excel file, the path is somewhere in here, okay, but that's not a very easy path to find. The easiest way to find this path is to click on Editing and open the Excel file in the desktop app. Again, of course, I should have prepped this up, but I didn't. This is probably going to open up on a different screen, and it does. Okay, so let's just bring this down here. Okay, so how do I get the path? Well, if you click on File and Info, then there's a little button here called Copy Path. Okay, let's just again open up Notepad. Now I've copied that, and we'll bring Notepad down here, and we'll just paste that in. Okay, so that's the path to this from an Excel perspective. Okay, so if I want to open this in a browser or anything else, and I just want the URL to it, this is the URL. Okay, so for me, it's https blah 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 APO group shared documents planner tasks -brum.xlsx $web equals 1. The $web equals 1 basically says, let's open this up in a browser. Okay. And I don't want to do that, so I'm going to get rid of the $web equals 1 and just have the rest of the URL. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that and copy it, Control C, and then of course just close that. I won't save that. And we are done with Excel, so we can close this down and we can close that file down. I could leave it open, it's no issue, because of course many people can edit this at once. However, we will just go back to shared documents. Okay, so back to Power BI, and basically I can then paste in that URL. Okay, dead easy. I could have just pasted it in here and got rid of the $web equals 1 at the end here. Okay, and effectively that's what this bit tells us. So once we've done that, we can click on Load. So Power BI is now going to go and use that parameter to say, here's the data that I'm expecting to see. I get the data out of the 6 tables that you can see there coming in. We have a little play with that data in Power Query. I'm not going to take you through that. It's beyond really what I wanted to cover today. But we will then go and load that data in and then use that data as the basis of the template that we're looking at. Okay, so we can ignore the About page and we can go on to Planner Tasks here. And let's just get rid of that little lot. You can see what I've created is a Power BI report, which now gives me the status of all of the tasks across all of the plans. Okay, so we've got, what I tried to do is I tried to use a little bit of the look and feel that Microsoft had used in Planner, because there's no point in me recreating everything. So if we go and have a look at maybe not golf championships, but our storytelling, and have a look at the charts. I remember seeing this initially with Microsoft, and they were one of the first people I'd seen who began to use very thin donut charts. It was an MVP conference, and they said, you can't go and use thin donut charts everywhere. And we went, well, why? You don't own them. They said, yeah, but it's our look and feel. You know, the Planner guys, we got a big telling off, but the Planner guys really started using these thin donut charts with then the card in the middle, which pretty much everybody uses now. Okay, so I've tried to take the same look and feel in terms of the colors that Microsoft have used and the types of graphs. So we can see here we've got the members in the plan, and then how many tasks they have associated to them. We've got some level of priority, urgent, important, medium and low. We've got tasks by bucket, and the colors represent whether the tasks are completed or whether perhaps they're late, etc. And you get a similar look and feel inside this status piece here. Okay, so with that in mind, if you put those visuals and just put those in your mind, and then I nip across to my Power BI report, oh, looks a little similar. Okay, but this then, of course, runs across all projects. So what I'm able to say is, hey, if I'm just interested in a plan called PL300 storytelling, then let's have a look at the status of that plan. Okay, so we can see the task, the bucket, the title of the task that we've got in there, the start, the finish date, who it's assigned to. I should do some conditional formatting in here because, of course, as Tobias mentioned, we can format a lot of things conditionally with DAX. So I should say, if this is late, then let's just perhaps put the background as red. But I've never got round to that, you know. We can see things by bucket, and of course you get all of the great interactivity that you would expect to have between the visuals, all of the great features that you'd have in Power BI. So if I'm interested in a single team, I can go and select a single team. If I'm interested in single team, I can select a single team. If I'm interested, let me just try that again, third time lucky. If I'm interested in a single plan, I can select a single plan. If I'm the team owner and I've got multiple plans, so let's say the team owner for project for the web fundamentals, then you can see that I've got at least 2 plans in there, and I think I should have, yeah, just for 2 plans in that team. We can have a look, of course, at all of the status. So I might not be interested in completed tasks. I might only be interested in late tasks, okay, or perhaps ones that are not started. So we have all of that great interaction in there. Let's just deselect all. And the one thing which is a little more difficult, which we can't do, is for labels. Okay, so in Planner, and I bring this up because people will want to know this, against a task in Planner, so let's just go into PL300 storytelling, into the grid view. Sorry, let's go into the board view. I can associate a label with a task, okay, and those labels are predefined as pink, not quite pink, pink, yellow, red, green, pink, yellow, red, green, blue, etc., etc. Now you can see for a couple of those labels, I've edited them and renamed them. So the yellow label I've called Katie, okay, and the blue label I've called Demo, okay. Now those names are only relevant for this plan, PL300 storytelling. Okay, if I went into a different plan and had a look at the yellow label, it would be called yellow. It wouldn't be called Katie. Okay, so those labels, those custom labels, don't translate across or don't come through into Power BI. And so you'll see all I have is I have a label called yellow, one called red, and one called pink, because those are the labels that I've actually brought through. The blue label is with a different course, which isn't published to Teams yet. Or sorry, I've only just put it on that plan, so it's not come through. So if you have a label naming convention, then you're going to have to create some sort of lookup table in Excel or within enter data within Power BI, so that you get the right label names coming across. Okay, this is also quite useful as well, because I can just go and say, hey, you know, which tasks have this Ben Howard got left and open and running, and actually none. So it might be the lowercase Ben Howard. I have a few Ben Howards. Oh, let's choose that one. Yeah, so, you know, really useful to be able to see how many tasks I've got remaining, how many I've got completed, how many I've not got started. And of course, from here, you would go and publish this. I'm not going to do that because I assume you all know how to publish data. Well, maybe you don't, because we've not done this so much for this user group. So I'm going to publish this. I'm prompted to save it. I'm just going to call it PBI Brum. Hello. That saves it as a Power BI PBIX file. And once we've saved it, we're then going to be asked where we want to publish it to. I think I have a folder called Planner Reports, which I do. We'll just select. That's going to publish that report up to there. That will happen fairly quickly. So if I come back to here and we open up app.powerbi.com. And I search for Planner Reports. There's my workspace. Well, in fact, there's my workspace as well, but it's already down here in the recent ones, so we'll click on it from there. Here's my latest content, PBI Run Flow. So what I should do is I should schedule that to refresh on a regular basis. So I can go into settings here. Sorry, not settings. I need to set the data set to refresh. So we'll choose this data set, settings. I need to edit the credentials. Okay. One of the reasons you need to edit the credentials is because I'd set this up as a web connection. Now, a web connection is typically I'm going out to the web and, you know, I go and browse Wikipedia anonymously, etc. So you might need to change this from anonymous into OAuth2. Okay, or your effectively Microsoft credentials. I'm going to set the privacy to organizational because I do that for all organizations, and then we choose the account which this is going to log in as. That should be fine. So that has got rid of the checkbox or the exclamation mark next to there, and then we can go in and schedule this refresh. So again, I would set this up to be daily to be just around, 1 a.m. would work fine for me if my refresh is going if my flow is going at 11 o'clock, I'm happy with 1 a.m. refresh. Okay, and then we should be able to just go back to the content and view that content. And as long as I set up my flow correctly, then this will always be updated. Okay, so that was it for Microsoft Flow and Planner Reports. I'm just going to check if we've got anything else on the slide deck. No, we haven't. The important thing is, I think if you want to get hold of that, there's a couple of things actually. The GitHub points, I think, to probably somewhere on YouTube where this is as well. But just if you search for Ben Howard, you get all sorts of stuff because, of course, there is a singer with who's got my name. And if you search for project, of course, you get everything as well, because everything in GitHub is a project. So I guess grab that URL, okay, or find me on LinkedIn or ask Flavio or anyone in the Power BI user group, and they'll be able to get you this info. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. Any questions? In fact, I'll leave the questions open. I'll keep sharing until we have some questions. Hear a bit of music in the background. That's my phone just going off. Okay, no questions.
Already actually shared the GitHub link on the comment. Thank you, Rachel.
Rachel, thank you. You're much smarter than I am. I'd forgotten that you could do that.
I'll ask a question, Ben, not Power BI related, but more to do with the planner itself.
Yeah.
So you said that comes included with the E1 license.
Yeah.
So let's assume you want to add another user to plan your work with that user.
Yeah.
Let's say it's me. Do I need to be in your tenant? How would you add me in to that planner environment?
Yeah, you're going to need to have access somehow to my tenant, aren't you? Either as, I guess, an external user, I could add you in, or as a, do you know, I've never done it. I guess I'd have you in as an external user. I do have some external users in here. So let's just go and assign this to our good friend Sheb. So Sheb, Raymond, is an external user. Okay. So the first thing is, do you want to add this? Sheb isn't a member of this group, so assigning this task to this user will also add that member to the group. Okay, this will give user access to all plan data, including any files and Teams channels. So if I assign an add, then yes, Sheb is an external member, but he can now see my group. Let me just check this for somebody else, actually. Yeah, Johnny's definitely an external member because I only set him up the other day to test something else. Now, how do you see this? I can add you, but can Sheb and Johnny see that? I've never tested that.
Yeah.
I've never tested that. I know I did it years ago with Microsoft Project and Project Online, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. That's what I'd say. So you can certainly add them so I can see what they have to do, but whether they're going to get notifications of that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, usually that's where you'd find those issues with things working or not working due to licensing. It's there.
Yeah. Certainly they'd need to have their own license. When we used to do it with Project Online, the external user would have to have their own Project Online license, and it's sharing in a similar way. So I suspect that the technology hasn't changed too much, and Microsoft's requirement to get paid for the software that they produce also hasn't changed.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us. This was a fantastic example also of what you have to do in real life. You have to use multiple tools, not just Power BI, but a number of things to get you to the end result. So much appreciated. That was really insightful.
Yeah, that's fine. A quick shout out to anybody. If anybody, I talked about Graph earlier, if anybody has any knowledge about building or modifying existing Power BI connectors, come and grab me on LinkedIn, because I can suck some time out of you, and I can give you dual kudos on the next one, which is hopefully we can get rid of Flow altogether and just use Graph to get at the data. But I'm struggling just on one piece at the moment. Okay, that's my want from the community. If you could.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that, Ben. Really appreciate it. I don't know if anyone had any questions before we wrap up at all, whether it was for going back to Tobias or any for Ben. No, seems like we're all good. Well, Tobias and Ben, thank you so much for going through that. I know obviously we've had some last minute changes, so really appreciate you guys coming along and sharing your wisdom. Thank you everyone as well for joining. In terms of the next event, if you keep an eye out on Meetup, we're going to be aiming for Thursday, the 20th of April, potentially in our office, but we will confirm that if it is a different venue, and we will get the speakers confirmed probably within the next week or so. But yeah, again, Ben, Tobias, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you so much, guys. Okay, thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.